this journey.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we're still waiting, aren't we? Or should we wait just another 2 minutes to 8:10, and then
That's
after
fine.
that we'll go from there. Anyone else not get a chance to introduce himself last week, or came in a little bit late? Who's in? We're on the early side of it. Most people seem to join in stream. So
My name is Brother Khalilullah Aziz. I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
what do you do, Brother Kulula?
In construction.
Hmm.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Anybody else? We got 4 other people over there. I can't see the names as clearly.
We have 2 minutes, actually 1 minute before we're going to get started. So if you didn't get to introduce yourself last week, please state your name and what you do.
Abdul Rahman Sharif. I'm the imam here in Thomas Thompson, North Carolina. Retired instrumentation control technologist, interested in agriculture and other aspects of import and export and connecting with African American farmers.
Yes, sir.
Assalamu alaikum, Shahida Jeffries from Masjid Muhammad, the Nation's Mosque. Into information technology, IT, and also do facility maintenance engineering. I'm just here to learn the opportunities that's being presented, inshallah.
Inshallah. In 8:09, we got time for one more person. If one more person wants to throw in, I think the people who haven't met Sister Fitra should also know who she is too. She's the most important person in the room. I'm just sitting here.
I'll try it. It's 10:10.
Oh, that was convenient. That was very convenient. Assalamu alaikum, Imam Talib.
You're on mute.
Alaikum assalam. Indeed. To everyone.
So like we did last time, I think it's best if Imam Talib starts us off, gives us a little background. Each of these segments is being recorded. So for some people, each one might be something new. And so we should give a proper introduction. And then also, Imam Talib, if you can lead us in prayer in order to start us off as well.
Okay, yeah, alhamdulillah. Let's open up with a prayer first. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladhina an'amta alayhim. Ghayril maghdubi alayhim waliddallin. Ameen. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. We certainly appreciate those who have joined, those who were here last week, and those who are here this week, and then those who will also be coming in the upcoming weeks. We thank Allah for the relationship with my brother Farouk. Actually, family ties. Our families are close. That's how it started, you know, and because that's where you get to know people, you get to trust people. He's been on this trajectory and trying to help our people, help himself and our people for some time now. We've seen that he has a reputation. The reputation is not based on what you're going to do, it's based on what you've done, and he's done a lot. So we thank Allah for him. We were looking to go to Kazakhstan for a religious piece a while back with the Pope coming to, I think, last year. So it didn't work out with me getting there, but I was able to get to Kazakhstan recently. We've been speaking, always looking out for interest for our community, our association, our people, to help advance ourselves economically. Certainly with economic power comes political power, which we need both. So we want to thank Allah for him. We want to thank Allah for you. And we got a series of events right now. And we're hoping that you don't have to go to Kazakhstan. We plan to go in September. Just get familiar with it. He welcomes people all the time. This is not the first time he's done this. This is the first time that we partnered. And again, it's an honor to partner with him on this event as well. So with that, I won't delay any further. Thank you, and turn over to my dear brother Farouk. And you on move, brother Farouk. And again, I just want to thank Sister Fitra, as Farouk said. She's the most important person in the room. We thank Allah for her. We've been working together over a decade now, and she's one of those again. reputation, not based on what you're going to do, based on what you've done. And she's done quite a bit, way beyond those decades as well. So we thank Allah for her and her helping to facilitate this trip as well. Go ahead, Farouk.
Yes, so thank you, Imam, for not letting Sister Fitr get away. That was.
Can we ask everybody to put themselves on mute while Brother Farouk gives his presentation? Thanks, Brother Farouk. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to make sure that everybody can see it. We are recording. Let me go ahead and do that now. And everyone should be able to see my screen. Also, we are presenting live as well. So I'm also going to share my screen into the live area too. If you give me 1 second to make sure it's the right one. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just need to validate that I have the right screen here. I have a very, very large monitor and I have too many windows up. To the right spot.
Sal, put yourself on mute, please. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay, perfect. Okay. All right, now we can get started. So the topic, of course, is why Kazakhstan? And this is a 9-part series. First of all, I just want to make sure, can everybody see my screen? Everybody see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay. This is a 9-part series on why Kazakhstan. Last series, we'll be uploading the video inside of Facebook and LinkedIn. The masjid is uploading the video to the website. You can watch the previous part of this series, which was about the New Silk Road. It gave a very good introduction as to why Kazakhstan was important from an overall economic standpoint. This week, we are focused on talking about the culture of Kazakhstan. Before we jump in, I want to go over really quick our agenda. We're a little 10 minutes behind, but it's okay. We might extend by 10 minutes because of that, but we'll try to get it all within the hour, being conscious of everyone's time. The first part is just about the sponsor, and you heard Imam Talib already talk, so we've actually made it past that point already. We'll get also a little bit of background about COSL and who we are and what we do. And then we'll get into our main presentation, and there's a lot of pieces to that. I'm not going to read all of that there, but there's a lot of pieces about understanding the culture of Kazakhstan. Very quickly, we're going to start with history, and then we're going to move all the way into today and what it means to actually do business in Kazakhstan today. The last part, 15 minutes, we'll dedicate the question and answer. And if any particular person wants to stay on beyond that 10 minutes, the call will end, but feel free to stay on and ask additional questions if you want to, and we'll record those and leave it in the recording. In the meantime, we ask that as the presentation is going, please use the chat inside of the Google Meet. Please use the chat in the Google Meet to put your question. It helps us to organize it better and make sure that we can get to every question appropriately. And you can do that while the presentation is going on. So first thing to know is about our company, COSL. COSL means connected in the Kazakh language. And it is a fully owned subsidiary of Geniusco Support Services, which is registered inside of the state of Georgia in the United States. COSL is registered here in Kazakhstan. And in addition to that, we are all member companies of the Freedom Nation which operates to find ways to facilitate Black people having environments of peace and prosperity. One, two, three things to know about COSAL in particular. And we use that name COSAL because we wanted the Kazakh people to feel like this was something, this part of our organization that originated within, and at least was specific to Kazakhstan. 100% Black-owned enterprise, and we are the first Black American enterprise in Kazakhstan. There are other small businesses in Kazakhstan, maybe just about 2 or 3, but they are all funded by other organizations, or they are kind of entrepreneurships. We are the first Black-funded, Black-owned enterprise in the country. And that's something we take a lot of pride on because it's a historical element. We are the only American developer on the Chinese border, and we operate the Freedom Village e-commerce center, which is a sourcing and fulfillment center on the border of Kazakhstan and China that's meant to help you reduce costs and also ensure that we can continue to source from the region to stay competitive throughout the geopolitical changes that we're now facing. COSAL's focus is to give heightened access for Black-owned businesses to Asia and to other parts of the world. We have a 4-year cooperation agreement between the Republic of Kazakhstan's Investment Committee via Kazinvest. That's the investment committee under President Tokayev. And our agreement is to market, work with, and help African Americans to take advantage of this space. And in exchange, the government opens up all free trade zones, all special economic zones, and all other economic privileges and investment privileges to us. We become a protected group. We are a protected group. After January last year, President Tokayev made a very big point of ensuring that the Minister of Foreign Affairs did a lot to protect investors in Kazakhstan. So we have a constant group that we can meet with at any time, that we can take all the way up to a prime minister level in order to support your initiatives in the area. Coming through COSAL into Kazakhstan, into Central Asia, into Asia, is probably one of the most comfortable things. I like to say that that group that's over here in the bottom right, when they came, they were here for an hour before they were sitting at a plate of grits, eggs, and sausage. So, you know, we take care of our people, and we make sure that this place is not foreign to you. A last thing to be said about COSAL is that we are registered inside of the AIFC autonomous region. We're actually going to get into that in the end of this conversation. That beautiful building there that looks like the Darth Vader ball is where our office is located at the Astana International Finance Center. Like I said, we'll get to that in the end of this particular conversation, so I won't reiterate it now. So what we're here to talk about is the culture of Kazakhstan. And most people will think about this image when you think about traditional anything with the last name Stan. I find that some of our people at home don't even know what Kazakhstan is. My mother still tells me, you know, you're in Kakalaka, Kazamaka, Wuka, and I use it as a joke. But the reality is that Central Asia hasn't necessarily been on the Black radar. So it's a little bit foreign to us. One of the things to understand is that the Kazakh Khanate, established in the late 1400s, was an offset of Genghis Khan's movement that came out of Mongolia. There are 3 tribes in Kazakhstan, and those 3 major tribes, one of the leading tribe has always claimed to be direct descendants of the Khan himself. And just in case you're wondering, I didn't say Genghis Khan because everyone from Mongolia to Central Asia says Genghis Khan. Chinggis, actually, not Genghis, Chinggis, C-H, Chinggis Khan. It's kind of the proper way to say it. So it's a very strong nomadic culture. It comes from the Khanate, and it's something that you should really look into if you want to know about the basic nature and the pride of Kazakhstan. Getting into the pride of Kazakhstan, that wonderful picture there is of Kenesari Khan. He was the last Kazakh Khan, and he led the resistance to fight off Russia in the early 1800s. So we should, there's still a lot of pride. And even though as we talk, or if you look up somewhere, you might see that Kazakhstan started, or you say the country was born in 1991. That in itself is not necessarily true. because Kazakh culture and the Kazakh wilderness area is actually hundreds and hundreds of years old. It goes to note to say this: before Chinggis Khan, Kazakhstan was actually populated by people who looked like those people from the Caucasus, those people from Georgia, the country. But they moved out of this space. There was a lot of transition. A lot of things happened with basically the Silk Road, the Christian Empire, as well as the Islamic Empire, that really adjusted the space. And this why the people look the way they do now. They are definitely of the Mongolian type. Some things that Kazakhs are proud about to understand about their culture and who they are as a people. It's at the root of every Kazakh when you meet them, that Kazakhs are very proud of their nomadic life. Now, of course, as you get into Kazakhstan, it's a very modern area. One of the slides that we didn't get in here was about the urban-rural mix in Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan has typically about 62% of its population living in its urban centers. So most Kazakhs live in a very modern life. They have Uber, they have enough food to be delivered to your door to make you fat as a house. I've lived here for 5 years and I don't go out for my groceries anymore. They're delivered to my door. So we have a very modern society to live inside of. However, the nomadic life still takes precedent. When you go to a person's house, and just one thing about African Americans and how we deal with Kazakh culture, if I had to say there was a big clash, one of the clashes is about sitting at the head of the table. When you come into and entering someone's house. In Kazakhstan, the old nomadic lifestyle meant that you would have your sheep or your animals outside grazing in the field. And you would have a yurt or gur sitting there, and that's where you live. If you were a traveler coming by and you needed to kind of re-up, get something to eat, if I came to your door and I asked you for hospitality, then my intentions were clear. But if I didn't come to your door, then the attitude was that I might be there to threaten your women, to threaten your sheep, to threaten your livestock and your livelihood. So Kazakhs have a kind of concept of, if you're outside of the door, you haven't made it through the threshold, then you're outside. My defenses are up. You'll get a little resistance from me. But the moment I let you through my door, that very second, I can do you no harm. And it's so serious that if you let your worst enemy through the door, you cannot attack this man in your house without having absolute public, the public just shunning you and staying away. Even your neighbors won't talk to you anymore. Even if this person is the most horrible guy that you ever met. If you let him in your threshold, that's it. And once you let a guy through your threshold, once you let him in your house and you tell him your family, after that, knocking on their door is offensive. I've actually had a whole full-blown argument with a friend of mine here in Kazakhstan who was mad at me because I wouldn't just walk into his house instead of knocking. And I told him that my mother and my father would turn over in their graves if they knew I just walked into somebody's house. And he said, but you're in Kazakhstan. And my mother and my father would turn in the grave. They knew you were knocking at the door. So it's a very interesting conundrum. Second part of conundrum is sit at the head of the table. Now, we know our experience keeps us from really accepting anyone coming into our house and sitting at the head of our table. But in Kazakhstan, the highest position of honor is always given to the guests. And the head of the table is intentionally given to the guests. The only other thing that would differ from that is if the table is facing the door, they will always give the guest the seat that looks at the door. And the reason why is to make sure that he's safe and feels good about who's coming into the house, so he never feels threatened. Those are very interesting things, and they're very interesting to argue with people about. But just know that Kazakh people are extremely proud of their nomadic life, very proud of it. Kazakhs are very proud that Islam is an integrated part of their culture. Some people might not even be practicing Islam very much. They might not be praying, they might be drinking alcohol, but even still, they have a strong pride in the fact that Islam and being Kazakh are felt to be intertwined. As we'll see in some later slides, there's a little slippage of that because of the experience, but Kazakhs don't feel the need as well to copy an Arab or an African version of Islam. They have their own methodologies. Of course, they follow the Quran and the Sunnah. They have very good focus on Islamic knowledge. But for example, when you're in Kazakhstan, you don't say that I'm going to the mosque. You say I'm going to make namaz. Namaz is a Kazakh word. You might say assalamu alaikum to somebody, but if you say shukran, they don't know what you're talking about. If you say spasiba in Russian, they don't know what you're talking about. So usually if you say rahmet, then you'll get the guy. And that is a Kazakh word. So they integrate Kazakh and Islamic culture together. The last one is that in the family and social life, tradition is very important. This one thing to really know about Kazakhstan is that they'll constantly, if you're talking with a Kazakh, he will constantly tell you Kazakh tradition, our culture, Kazakh tradition. They are very serious about it, and they're very serious about keeping up the Kazakh tradition. And we're going to find out a little bit later why it's so important to them. I put these two images together for a reason. Most of us should know what the one on the bottom is. That's Booker T. Washington lifting the veil off of a slave. And it was made in the mid 1800s in Tuskegee, Alabama, my home. I grew up seeing this statue almost every day. But the statue above is a statue that was made around the exact same period of time in Kazakhstan. And it was to memorialize the 1.8 million people in Kazakhstan who died of famine because of Russian rule. There's a deep contrast between African Americans and Kazakhs and what they went through. Yeah. Take out the idea of slavery and just think 1850 forward. If you think about the emancipation and then you think beyond emancipation, you think about the struggles, the hardship. In actuality, African Americans had a head start because the Kazakhs were still going through a lot. Russia annexed Kazakhstan into the kingdom of Russia and the empire in 1863. And they did it based on a law that they called annexing the troublesome areas. That's those people who demanded to fight. One thing about Kazakhs is that they really take a lot of pride in being protectors of their home. They take a lot of pride in being strong men. You know, when you're here in Kazakhstan, one thing that you should be very aware of is that Kazakh men are very stereotypical traditional men. Okay, they like being tough. They broaden out their shoulders a little bit when they walk. They puff out their chest, even if they're a little guy. They respect people who box and fight. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has a great hold here in the country and is very extremely popular. Anyone who follows the UFC knows that people from this area of the world are very popular fighting. People know about Triple G. The country is extremely proud of Triple G. So there's a lot of pride in being those men. During 1906, 1935, and I've got some dates. I'm not going to read through all of them because it doesn't sum up all of what happened. But one of the things we should know is that there was forced slavery, kidnapping, destroying of the steppe, the area where they live, destruction of the nomadic life, the promotion of atheism, meaning that if you were someone who promoted any other religion, you were considered to be an enemy of the state. And Russians would kill you, or they would put you in jail and beat you. And at some point in that history in the 1900s, if a Kazakh were to even raise his hands up to pray for at his mother's funeral, he'd be arrested. If his neighbor looked through his window and saw that he had a Quran or he was making prayer, then he would be arrested. Even their names were changed from their traditional names and Islamic names over to Russian names, and they couldn't hold the name because they didn't want to stick out. So at the same time where we were fighting a lot of our, the crazy things that were happening with lynching and everything else, and we were fighting through that, Kazakhs were still very much going through a heavy level of oppression, trying to retain their identity at the same time. And that history of starvation, segregation, forced labor, colonization is still kind of looming. But as we get into it, you'll understand it's there. The people don't forget, but they had to latch onto something to come out of that space. Now, in 1991, Kazakhstan signed its constitution, and during the collapse of the USSR, became an independent country. They started building at a rapid pace, and if you can imagine what it's like, the country itself, the current version, after 100+ years under Russian rule, the current version of the country, the independent country, is only a little more than my numbers just went shy on me, but 30 years old. And they just celebrated their 30th independence. It's a very young country in development sense, a very young country in spirit sense. But unlike African Americans, one thing that Kazakhs got is they got their country back when it was all over. And the sense of pride and everything there is pretty intense. During the Russian occupation in Kazakhstan, there were several books written about Kazakh culture, things that were extremely old, things that allowed people to track their lineage back 30, 40, 50 different grandfathers deep. All of that information was stored by a set of monks in the cave. They kept it secret. And then when they finally achieved independence, brought it out and made it a national treasure. So now there's a dedicated part of the government that you can go to, even when you go to get married, to track your lineage and to track your lineage of your spouse and go as far back as you seem fit to figure out who you are and what you are. They didn't lose that, and they hold that as a big sense of pride as part of their independence. Now, during the Russian era, and as well as the fact that Kazakhstan sits on the Silk Road, it basically integrated with a lot of different cultures. So it might look like Kazakhstan is a uniculture, because when you look at it, we as Americans, we tend to look at people who have slanted eyes and just say, hey, everybody's the same. One of the jokes that one of my friends here in Kazakhstan tell me, he said, you know, a bunch of Kazakhs got into a small fight in New York. And when the person who witnessed the whole thing gave his account, he said, yeah, these big old Chinese came in here and beat everybody up. So even though, the more you're around Kazakhs, the more you're in the space, the more you understand the slight differences in the ethnicity, even though people share the same skin color and they share some facial features. Definitely the majority of people in Kazakhstan are Kazakh people, traditional Kazakh people. So that's 70%. 18% are Russian, and that's a lot of the back and forth. But it's something to be said about Russians in Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan did something very good. When they got their independence, they chose not to take any retribution. And they accepted Russians as Kazakhs. Not as Kazakh people, like Kazakh culture, but as Kazakhstani. I should say Kazakhstani, meaning as Kazakh citizens. There were also Germans here, Uzbek, Uyghur. There's Ukrainians and Tatar that are all inside of Kazakhstan. And they, in the government, what they've done is they've created this day called Unity Day. And during Unity Day, there's a humongous parade. The whole country has events, all to share what it means to be in unification with these some 70 plus ethnic groups that are here in Kazakhstan. The government gives each ethnic group its own budget to build a cultural center to educate people about things about their culture, as well as to take steps to preserve their languages and preserve their culture. Kazakhstan, of course, sees the force of being forced to speak Russian and the intentional destruction of their language as a very bad thing. And so now, as a part of Kazakh culture, as a part of the law, maintaining people's culture and maintaining people's language is a very big thing. Kazakhstan, it needs to be said, is a moderate Islamic and peaceful interfaith space. This is the National Mosque that was just built. It holds about 50,000 worshipers at any given time. It is a beautiful work of art. It was just built. It is the largest mosque in all of Central Asia, and it sits only to the second largest mosque in Central Asia, which is Hajar Sultan Mosque, which is also here in Astana, where I'm having this conversation right now. It's also to be said that there's not a lot of conflict. You don't see conflict between Christians and Muslims. If someone's at the table and says they're agnostic or atheist, no one tries to fight them or beat them down. People will fight about their culture. But when it comes to religion, there's a lot of room to find your way and in order to get stronger. The government has a very moderate method of bringing people back into Islam and starting a kind of light, modern Islamic renaissance in the country. And that is by building beautiful spaces of worship, by investing. The cost of this mosque was $375 million. So they invest in it. The previous president, the first president of Kazakhstan, when he built the mosque that was the first, and now the second, he said, listen, you can go to your mosque in your communities, in your neighborhoods, and you can pray. But when you make Jummah, when you come to Eid, you need to come to one mosque and consolidate yourself, because I do not want you to split yourself based on religion. We're one people. We need to be connected. So it's a very unique thing that, like Hajj Sultan Mosque hosts 20,000 people. There are all of 25,000 people at Hajj Sultan at every Jummah. And for a lot of people, they'll come to the mosque for the very first time. So, I had this conversation in Turkey. I didn't understand big mosques before, but I understand it now. One of the appeals of big mosques, big churches, everything else is to give people a place where worship feels beautiful, where they want to come and they're enticed to come in. And that is the methodology that they use here in Kazakhstan. Beards are not a common thing in Kazakhstan. People don't really wear them very often. You do have it. No one's going to shun you because of it. There was a fear early on in the creation of the country that radical Islamic movements would move into Kazakhstan from Afghanistan, from Chechnya, from other areas. So there was a hard hand. That hand has been loosened up quite a bit, and it's constantly being loosened up around the idea of what it means to be Muslim. And even at this point, there's a slight encouragement from the government through a couple of advertisements that, accepting people who wear hijab, integrating hijab back into society and everything else. And every year we've been here, we've seen more hijabis, more hijabis, more hijabis. And it's a very interesting thing. But, I don't know if you've not traveled to some of the CIS countries before, if you've not traveled to post-conflict countries like Kosovo and other places, literally I'm going to say it like I feel it, the Wahhabi push of kind of radical Islam comes in very fast, and it uses poverty as a means by which to tell people to take on an extreme version in view of the religion. And Kazakhstan was very deliberate in pushing that back and getting to a pace of prosperity before reintroducing and advertising Islam. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying it's what they did, and it creates a modern Islamic space. Religion in Kazakhstan looks like this. About 67 to 70% of Kazakhstan is Muslim, and people identify as Muslim. 19% is Christian. 9% still hold on to atheistic views after coming out of the Russian periods. There is a good group of agnostic individuals, and there is a very large mix of everything else. So Judaism, everything else, but at very small numbers throughout Kazakhstan that represent about 2% of the population. Not a whole lot to be said about this after saying things about the previous slide, but this is the religious makeup of Kazakhstan. Now, when we come to language, it's to be known that Kazakhstan primarily is a Russian-speaking state. However, you cannot hold public office. You cannot do anything with the government. You can't even travel into some areas if you don't speak Kazakh. Kazakh was repressed significantly during the Russian era, but the country did a lot to hold on to it, and now it emphasizes the necessity for Kazakh. About maybe 10 years ago, only 67% of the population spoke Kazakh. Now 83% speak Kazakh. English is spoken here and there, and it's more popular amongst the youth than it is amongst elders inside of the country. There are a lot of initiatives to try to move to that space, but because Kazakhstan, based on our last conversation, shares one of the largest borders in the world with Russia, their connection with the Russian language won't go away. That's not foreseeable at all. But if you're operating on the street, you're moving around, speaking Russian will get you very far, very, very far. English will get you by, but you will need a translator. We offer that at Coastal, and we have our own staff work. All of our staff falls in this 22% of Kazakhs that are trilingual. Every time I read one of these trilingual things and I see how many people in the country speak 2 or 3 languages, I feel embarrassed as an American to only have been raised speaking one. Most Kazakh children learn Kazakh and Russian in school, and any of them going to international schools learn Kazakh, Russian, and English as well. The age of Kazakhstan is really important, and it's important to understand that Kazakhstan is in a growth period. The starvation period in Kazakhstan as well as there were several starvations. There were big famines that happened at multiple times, especially after World War II, as well as the fact that Kazakhs were a primary element of the infantry. They were Kazakhs that fought in Afghanistan for the Russians. There were Kazakhs that fought in World War II and Stalingrad. If you know the history of Stalingrad, there were more people died in Stalingrad on the single day than died from the entire Allied troops in World War II. Kazakhstan lost almost 14 million people. They lost half of their entire population during World War II because of famines and war. And so they have a heavy emphasis on having babies. Kazakh women are incentivized to take very long paternity leaves. In some cases, Kazakh women can take up to 2 years of paternity leave and have their job guaranteed when they return back to work after 2 years. And that's 2 years paid maternity leave. Because of these kind of policies around marriage, around having more babies, this 0 to 14 population makes up 26% of the population in Kazakhstan. Is one of the fastest growing populations is the youth. Also, the 15 to 24 and the 25 to 40 make up collectively 28%. And then the other percentage of people who are over the age of 40 collectively only make up about 36% of the population. So it's fair to say that Kazakh has a young population, but as part of their culture, one of the things you should understand is that the young population has not done away with having a very heavy respect for their parents. So when their parents tell them to follow Kazakh culture, when their parents are in another village 4 hours away and say, come home, they get up and they go. That's important to know from a business standpoint, because if mom and dad tell them to do something, they will do it. That part of modernality has not reached Kazakhstan. It touched the surface, but there's a social norm and a social discipline in Kazakhstan where the entire society will cave in on you if you break these basic rules. So they're typically still very good. What's to be said about the young population, though? They are, a lot of them, English speaking. A lot of them have very modern methodologies and ways of thinking about things. They definitely believe that Kazakhstan can be one of the future cities in the world and one of the most modern cities in the world, modern countries in the world. And they really work hard to get there. They believe in their country and what they can do. They travel a lot. They travel a lot. Like 90% of the people travel a lot. The older Kazakhstan generation stays mostly to the village. They hold very traditional ways. But like I said, they're highly respected. Highly respected. And even in Kazakhstan, if you are an older person that had up to 4 kids, you're officially deemed by the government as a hero. And they give you an award and everything at a big ceremony, and you are a hero. So, there's not as much divide between these two cultures, two age groups, as we would think so, like in the United States. But there is a big divide in their mindset and where they want to go. And it's good to know that right off the bat. Now, one thing is we ask, like, what is it that they have a view of Black people? How do Kazakhs view Black people? I put these pictures here for a reason. This is actually, Mike Tyson's wearing a shalpan. He actually did visit Kazakhstan. If you go to a gym anywhere in Kazakhstan, whether it be Shymkyn, Atral, Akhtal, you go to Astana, Almaty, you go to anywhere, you find a gym, even in a hole somewhere, in Pavlodar somewhere, whatever, you will find a picture of Mike Tyson and Muhammad Ali on the up. You'll find a picture of Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson way before you find a picture of Triple G or any other Kazakh boxer. The strength of African Americans, that picture I showed before of Booker T opening up for slaves, that idea that we traverse through our problems and that we stay strong, the physical strength of African Americans is very appealing to Kazakh people. And it's highly respected. A lot of people, when they were coming 1991, coming in the early 2000s, were coming and they're having hard times trying to reestablish the country. They're building themselves up and doing things. They hooked on to messages from Snoop Dogg and 50 Cent. As a matter of fact, if you mention a Snoop Dogg and 56 sound, most of the people who are of a certain age group will sing the song from beginning to end. It became very popular here in Kazakhstan. And the idea of meeting a Black person is like top of the list. So when you walk into a public place in Kazakhstan, and this is our previous delegation that came here, you need to be prepared to take pictures. And don't feel bad about it, because no one's taking pictures because you're an oddity. It's just that, just like this conversation, why Kazakhstan had to happen is African Americans don't come to Kazakhstan. So when they do, people pick you out. They say, wow, you're so beautiful. You're so handsome. This is what actually these three ladies were saying to the three sisters that were with us. You're so beautiful. Please, can I take a picture with you? And they wanted to take that picture. They wanted to show it. You saw them immediately texting their family members like, wow, look at this. I met such and such, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's not odd to be in a taxi and somebody say, man, you look like Muhammad Ali, or you look like Mike Tyson. I take a picture. I want to send to my family, say this and that. And they'll be bragging for the whole day. And you'll see the guy again in the taxi 2 months from now. And he'll look at you and say, hey, remember me? Remember me? Remember me? Yeah. So it's actually very excited. 5 years I've been here, 4 children and my wife. And I don't believe, with the exception of maybe 2 drunk people, they were dead drunk. Outside of 2 drunk people, have I received any negative connotations or ideas around race. It's always been positive. When I speak to most people, I say, Assalamu alaikum, bratan. In Russian, brat just means like brother, you know, like brother in general. But bratan means like my bro. And so typically I say, Assalamu alaikum, bratan. I get a very good welcome from most people and in most circles that I deal with. And that's the way we're received on a constant basis. One thing I want to talk about in this case, when it comes to thinking about African Americans and thinking about Kazakhstan, Kazakhstan is the only place inside of Asia. I think I'm missing a slide here. I'm going to go back. It's the only, actually, I should go here. I'm sorry. It's the only place in Asia that has this very unique autonomous region. They did this intentionally. So this is the building I showed before where our office is at. Actually, the part of the building you're looking at is exactly where our office is at. Our window looks out that window right there. And this is not a rendering or anything else. This is where we go to work every day. The autonomous region, the AIFC, has generated over $8.3 billion of investment and registered over 1,900 countries in the last 5 years since they started. I came here. We were one of the very first companies to be registered at the AIFC. And I believe we were the second American company to be registered in AIFC and get authority there. It is a very interesting and unique space. I won't go deeply into the presentation about the AIFC. If anyone is interested in learning more about that, then that'll be another part of our conversation. We'll hit on the AIFC several times throughout this the remaining 7 weeks that we have during our presentation. What's important to know, it's a one-stop shop. So if you are a foreign business person, within inside the confounds of all of these structures you see is the court, is the equivalent of the Central Asia's Wall Street, is even Bloomberg's offices, is the registrar's office, is the equivalent of the SEC for getting, is it called AFSA? Also the equivalent of your startup centers, the Astana Hub, the equivalent of the government IT facilities from the Ministry of IT. Everything is in this one structure. And on this one side of the river, you see the lights in the back. And the AIFC is in control of all of that. The law of the land when it comes to business law is British or common law. It actually is not even Kazakh law. So it's a very interesting space to do business in, a lot to think about. One of the most interesting parts is coming to Kazakhstan. You get a 5-year visa in 5 days after registering your company with the AIFC. There's a specialized expat center. We are very chum with everybody. We've been working with them for 5 years. And basically within 5 days, you can fully have a 5-year visa. You know, you in and out, no problem. After the 5 years is over, you can renew for another 5 years. I have. And then after you renew for the 5 years, you can get a 20-year resident visa in Kazakhstan. This is really important to understand that in the most simplest way, you can get 30 years in this country. It really is a second home in Asia to do business, to use. Later we'll talk about this Kazakhstan as a hub in one of our sessions after this. But you'll understand that this is what makes it the ability to hub. You cannot go to any other Asian country and not put a considerable amount of money in the bank and get 5-year visa within 5 days. It is not possible anywhere in Asia. As a matter of fact, I haven't seen it possible anywhere in Africa. So it's a very unique construct, very unique concept, and allows us to do a lot of work in Kazakhstan. Last but not least, I wanted to cover this really quick, and that's the cost of doing business and cost of living in Kazakhstan. Just some basic numbers to throw out. The picture in the back is of a real apartment. It's in my building here that I'm in. Our apartment is very similar to this one. This is a luxury apartment inside Highville complex, which is filled with a bunch of different expats. Inside of my own building, I have the South African ambassador. We have the French ambassador living in this building. The typical worker, a low-level admin, entry-level admin, or general worker is about $500 a month in Kazakhstan, and that's including the taxes that you'll have to pay. And then $1,700 a month will get you that type of furniture, fully furnished apartment, 4 bedrooms, 2,500 square feet, and include all of your utilities, all of them, light, water, as well as your internet. And it's a pretty amazing thing when it comes to costs and saving costs and operating at a low cost. $5 is what it costs on a daily basis to get an Uber Black and ride a Mercedes from this side of town all the way to the other side of town and then ride back. I don't think that you can even put your foot inside of a broken down Uber anywhere in the US anymore for that price. But these are the basic costs that are still holding even under inflation at the moment inside of Kazakhstan. With that, I'm at the end of the presentation. I'm going to close down the screens here. I want to say thank you for listening to me and hearing me out. I'm hoping we have some questions. We're going to jump right into them. I am going to reshare my screen again here. So give me just 1 second. Yes. Okay. And I'm going to also presenting here now as well.
Yeah, also Farouk, can you hear me? I'm having some internet cuts.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I noticed when I was there, we did visit some homes. All the homes I visited in the area that I was in when it came to dinner time, and I'm glad you mentioned about the head table piece because I now understand why they had me sit there. I didn't know at the time. And but everybody sit traditional. Everything was traditional. Is that the case all across the country?
Absolutely
you're sitting. Okay.
Okay. No, Imam, that actually, Kazakhstan, when it comes to like the stands, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan is one of the most sedity of all of them. When you live in the city, the big fancy table, with big fancy chairs and all that kind of stuff. Like this chair I'm sitting in came with the apartment. Okay. So, it's just a normal thing. People in Kazakhstan, they like new stuff. One of my lawyers was a CEO of McDonald's and Wendy's and Hardee's here inside of Astana. And he would say that he used to buy brand new furniture for the McDonald's every 7 months because he just would clean out because people just wanted it to look nice and clean and fancy and European. And that was the whole thing. That was one of the buzzes. So Kazakhs are definitely in the city. Definitely in the city. They like the flash and the bling.
Wonderful. Now, also in the area that I was in, I did go to the masjid with Kazakhs, and they didn't speak any English, and so we had to struggle to communicate. But they did speak Arabic, and they say a lot of them speak Arabic too because of the religion. So I mean, you didn't mention that, but is that the case in the area that you are in as well?
So you were in Turkestan. And Turkestan is an autonomous region within Kazakhstan that has a very strong Islamic history. Mm-hmm. And if people actually leave the other parts of Kazakhstan to go to Turkestan in order to experience that feel that you got when you went down there, they use it like a tourist space. They literally, like, people literally go from Kazakhstan. I went to Turkestan. You got girls who are walking up in a miniskirt and they'll go to Turkestan, they'll hijab down everything in Turkestan, and then come back with life changed. I went to Turkestan. It was awesome to Islam. And Turkestan, the mayor down there, I actually met the mayor of Turkestan when they made this movie on Netflix. I forget the name of it. It's not worth mentioning. But they were talking about Turkestan like it was some bad place where terrorists were from. And he wanted to make a point of letting people know Turkestan was not this place in the movie. And so, he took a lot of money and really helped to invest in some of this, newer Islamic structures that are inside of Turkestan as well. So, even the hotels that are really nice and traditional, all that kind of stuff that's in there. A lot of that's been built over the last 6 years, 5-6 years. You know, so but Turkestan is very historic too as well. Very, very historic.
Brother Farouk, we have a few questions. So after Imam Talib, can we go to the questions, or do you have another question for Farouk before we go to the questions?
No, go straight to the questions, Sister Fitra. Yeah.
Okay then. So Brother Farouk, you can read them and just answer them. Go down the list.
Yes, ma'am. So I'll read them off. I'm going to say one more quick thing
Sure.
to the point that the Imam made. You know, one thing to understand about Kazakhstan is the closer you get to Russia, the more Russian the people get. The further you come from Russia, the more Islamic traditional that they get. So people Shimkin, Tajikistan, Turkestan area, they're very different than the people in the north. And it's a weird construct because just the way that it goes is the people in the north are straightforward. They don't butter things up for you. They might seem rude sometimes, but they're just trying to tell you straight up, you know, how things are, good or bad. And in the South, they'll of course give you hospitality, whatever, and then tell you what's straight up somewhere around a dessert. So that's the difference between the place, and it's a very known concept. So I see, is snow an event that ever happens? First of all, in Turkestan area as well as in Shimkin area, it's desert almost. It's almost a desert area. However, in Astana, where I'm at, it is the second coldest capital in the world.
Woo.
And you know, the delegation is coming at just the right time, because if you stay over till October 21st, you know, it gets snowed nice and pretty. So it usually gets somewhere around the end of December, 1st of January, around -52 in the toughest years.
Wow.
And -46 in some other years. I've learned because it's extra fat I got on myself. You know, I think I like the cold better than I thought I did before. Imam Fakan was here, and Imam Fakan's son was here, and it was still snow on the ground. Imam Fakan's son had on a t-shirt, and I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "I'm fat. I'm happy. It's cold." So, but no, and then when you drive on the outskirts, like to the villages or agricultural stuff, agriculture here is affected by the snow, because when it snows, it's done. Your people, they take the cows out to one place, they park, they don't leave that place until the snow melts. And that's just that simple. And that's just the way it goes. The second question is, have most of Kazakh people been able to...
Brother Farouk, I think you're missing some questions at the top. Is 5/31 a unity day in Kazakhstan?
I see.
Mhm.
I see. I'll be honest with you. I am the worst person in the world when it comes to the dates of some of the holidays in Kazakhstan, because Kazakhstan has a lot of holidays. I typically walk into my office and no one's there sometimes, and I'm saying, where'd everybody go? They're like, oh, it's a holiday. And it's constant. It's like, but y'all just came off a holiday. Yeah, but it's a 3-day holiday. It's 4-day holiday. Like what? But they have some really great holidays. They have Men's Day here. They call it Heroes Day. So you know, so I appreciate some of them and the theme around some of them, but there's a lot of them. There's quite a few of them. The Quran they use, is it translated in Kazakh? Yes. As a matter of fact, just the other day we met the gentleman who actually translated the Quran into Kazakh. And the most recent version. He was at the mosque the other day handing out the Qurans the other day. Yes, they do have a Quran that's translated into Kazakh, but when it comes to the Quran, people, you know, Arabic is Arabic, Islam is Islam. You can't escape that. When it comes to that, that's there. And like the Imam said, there are several people who are definitely in the religious sphere. When they go out and learn and train, they learn Arabic. Have most of the Kazakh people been able to come out of the extreme poverty that was caused by the history? Is the gap as large as the U.S.? I would say the gap is not. I would say there are definitely poor people in Kazakhstan, and there are things, but one of the main reasons the gap is not so bad in Kazakhstan is because people are very tribal. They live with their family members. You know, people in their 30s live with their parents and nobody complains. There's a concept here in Kazakhstan that's extremely interesting to me. If somebody, like, let's just say your cousin shows up with his 2 kids and his wife, and they come to your house in May and they stay, you are to never ask them when they're leaving. Never, ever. And I've gone to people's houses and they've said, yeah, they've been here for 6 years. We don't know what they've been here for 6 years. And it doesn't just go to family. I had one guy who was a friend, and he literally turned around and said to me, he said, he said, this guy that's in my house is an old friend of my dad's. And
Wow.
he just showed up one day for dinner. He's been here for 8 years. And I don't mean like been there sleeping on the couch. They gave him a room, and he's been in that room, and they don't ever think about asking him to leave. And it's actually ridiculously common. My lawyers, I'm great. I'm a godfather to their children. I go to their house. There's someone living in their house, and literally they tell me that the man just showed up. That they didn't know him from Adam. He just showed up, and he's been there for 4 years. You know, that's Kazakhstan. So poverty doesn't seem as bad when you have community. You know, it changes a lot. You don't have much money in your pocket, but you're not starving. You're not homeless. You know, so you don't have as much of that. But you should know this is a socialist country, and people do put a lot of onus on the country to make sure that they're distributing at least enough wealth. They're not being so greedy that they're taking from everything. They say you got to distribute enough to make sure that people are taken care of. And one of the most taboo concepts in Kazakhstan from a political standpoint is people getting out and protesting that they're poor, or they can't afford food, or they can't afford coal in the winter. That's still a very big thing. And the economy is still judged by the price of bread. Very much so. Very much so. If the common man can't afford bread, it's all over. So given that, by the way, you can get extremely great artisan bread here for like 25 cents. It's a pretty amazing thing. I see what amount of money needs to be deposited in order to get the 5-year visa. That's the interesting thing. None. Absolutely none. Not a drop, not a dime. You have to come over here and set up your bank account. You set up your business. You need to do all the things. You get a local number, IN number, a local EIN number, everything else. We help you with that. And we help you get through that really quick when you're here. That's part of what we do for our Freedom Nation citizens. We help them a lot to do that kind of stuff. But this is what's unique about Kazakhstan. The regime is none. You just register the business, get ready to go, get a place to run your business out of, and there you go. You're good to go. Do they keep pets? Cats. People are humans. People got little chihuahuas, little dogs. We see them here and there every once in a while. People got their little cats and stuff like that. Folks do all their little stuff. You know, there's a very, like I said, there's a very cosmopolitan feel around, especially some of the luxury spaces. Highville, where I live, is the posh thing. So, you know, you'll see, you know, a lady out with her glasses on and her little chihuahua and poochoo doll, you know, and going to the bakery in the morning to get the bakery like it is in France, somewhere in Paris. It happens. It happens without a problem. But most people, because wolves are real, so outside of the city, wolves are real, and you can run into a couple of them. They do keep certain types of dogs to fend off certain types of animals when you live on the outskirts, inside the faraway places. What is the quality of medical care? I can only speak to my experience. One of the things, Imam Talib and Sister Fitz, I wanted to mention this. When the delegation comes, we've set aside 2 dentists that we trust very, very much. And they really should take advantage of it. This back tooth of mine, it rotted out and had to be pulled, and it was digging into my other tooth. I was in Moldova. I had it replaced surgically, a whole thing put in. They gave me a 10-year tooth, all this kind of stuff. I paid $125. When I came, and that was from the dentist that did surgery on the president of the country. So when I came here to Kazakhstan, they had to replace this tooth because it had been 10 years. So they replaced this tooth. They rebuilt the whole structure. They expanded the root canal a little bit more. They take care, clean all my teeth, everything else. I walked out $99. That's what I paid. And it was a great dentist. My wife got, you know, all her what do you call it, braces and all that beautiful stuff and everything else. She paid the package deal. It was $500. And that's 2.5 years worth of seeing the dentist to get things done. We had our baby here. We had Reza here, and Reza was actually blue baby. You know, the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck and was choking him, and he came out blue. And I thank Allah SWT that I was here because I've had not so great care at Crawford Long and Emory and other places in Atlanta. But this staff here was so attentive. I was on the cry when I think about it. They understood everything that was going on. And the situation was so serious. I told my wife, if you don't push now, we're going to bury the baby, not have the baby. And in that process, this staff here was amazing, absolutely amazing. They knew everything to do, and they were smooth, and they didn't even speak English, and they were still doing everything well. The only thing weird about the medical after that was I was the only man amongst the women pushing the baby around the hospital after that. So everybody's looking at me crazy. but outside of that, no, there are some areas where it's not so great, right? Some specific specialties. And in that case, if you're in Kazakhstan, you can always take advantage of a 4-hour flight to Turkey. And you can get excellent care in that way. I'm also catching up. When can you buy property? Did I miss one in that? I think I did. So there's a lot of questions, and I will say this at this point: we are over already.
Okay.
And we will continue to go over. I don't mind going over, but I want to give Imam Talib and Sister Fitra a chance to kind of close out, and then I'll stay on, and I will go over. Anyone who wants to stay on, please stay on. I'm more than happy to go even up to 30, 40 minutes over.
Just one last question. Do they offer manufacturing of goods like T-shirts and clothes, like in China?
So we have a manufacturing element to this conversation.
Okay.
And in that manufacturing element, we'll get really in detail. But what I would like to say about that more than anything else is yes, but it's more important to use Kazakhstan as a hub and a sourcing hub than it is always just to get your things here.
Perfect.
The best cotton in the world is in Uzbekistan. So, sometimes it's much better to use it as a hub.
Yeah. And Farouk, I'm only saying 4 more questions. If you can just go ahead and hit those, and then we can close out, and then others can stay if they need to.
Yes, sir, I will. So I see, when can you buy property? Do you need to be a citizen? You do not need to be a citizen to buy property. Once you register your business, the best thing to do is buy property in your business name. I suggest that anyway. If you come through us, if you talk to us, we're not going to encourage that you buy property in your personal name anyway. We're going to encourage you to buy property in your business name. If you need local property, like if you buy like a property that we're developing, we develop property here, we'll tell you to sign a contract with us in the US and allow us to get all the paperwork for you and transfer it to you in appropriateness. And we'll set up all those pieces to make it easy for that. There's a million ways to get it done. But in order to buy property, just a straight old fashioned way, my name is John. I want to go in, buy a property. I want the deed to say John on it. Then you need to get a residence card, but you can buy property and be a foreigner as well. But I would suggest you get a residence card in order to do that. And as a matter of fact, let me say this a different way. You can buy an apartment as a foreigner, but to buy land, to own land, you need to get a residence card in order to do that. But your company can do it day one. The other one is, Assalamu alaikum, is a human resource and recruiting business from the US needed. The only thing I will say about that is this. We have a brother here named Rustam. He's an Uyghur. He's an awesome individual, amazing person. And he is definitely a deep family friend and a friend of our movements and the work that we do. He is Mr. HR in Kazakhstan. I mean, he is Mr. HR in Kazakhstan. He has these Telegram groups with, I think he's got just short of about 5,000 HR specialists and executives throughout the entire country on this group. And he's respected by all of them. We would suggest that if you do want to do something like that, work with him. The main thing that's needed is to have structure and order along with the Kazakh law. There's only one competitor who has that. That's HH.KZ. And a competitor to HH.KZ is just waiting to be to emerge as well. Last one, has Cargos opened back up? Yes. Cargos officially, the President Xi Jinping visited here in January. And then it was his first international visit after COVID restrictions was to Kazakhstan. And he announced not only the border reopening, which it has, but he also signed an agreement to allow all Kazakhs and Kazakh residents to walk into China across any border, whether it be airport or otherwise. They no longer need a visa. They get visa on arrival inside of China. I think it's up to 90 days to be able to come in and go out. And they gave the same to the Chinese as well. So The border in Cargos is fully open. They dismantled the crane that was there before when Kim and other citizens came. Now it's just, you can still just walk back and forth like you want to now. It's wide open right now. You mentioned boxing. I think it's the last one. You mentioned boxing. Upon visiting, inshallah, like to visit the most popular gym, Triple G Training Grounds. So I'll tell you that the head of the largest jiu-jitsu dojo in the entire country, the most winningest guy in Central Asia for jiu-jitsu. He's an Uyghur, actually. And he has invited the delegation to come to the dojo. He wants to host and have everybody there as well. So he's also been very helpful, extremely, and giving us connections to the Uyghur community on the border so that we can source and we can hire Uyghurs to work for our organizations when we work over here, and yours when they come over. So that's the last question. I think I got them all. Like I said, I will hold if somebody wants me to, but I wanted to make sure that everybody got there. I hope this information was valuable to you. Quick question on time difference. 10 hours. It's 9:13 p.m. right now. I hope this information was valuable to you. We have 7 more sessions left. And I'm going to hand over to Sister Fitri Imam Talib. But, you know, I enjoy doing this. I enjoy sharing this information. I enjoy the idea. I've not just been in Kazakhstan for 5 years. I've been in Central Asia for back and forth for 2 decades now. And I really love the idea of helping us to come into this space very easy and for us to get the international mind necessary to really access it as a tool. So that's it. And inshallah, I'll see you next week. I'll also, like I said, stay online if you need me to.
Okay, so we're going to go. Salahuddin, I guess he had a hand raised. So since he's part of the organizing piece, if he want to go ahead and make the comment or question real quick. Salahuddin, Tawhidi.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Farouk, what is their concept or notion on interracial marriages? Do you see many interracial marriages there?
So you got to understand about Kazakhs. Like I said, they lost half their population. It is the 9th largest country as far as landmass in the world. Huge country. They've only got 14 million Kazakhs. Okay, that's it. So what happens is not like people are against it. Not like you'll go to someone's parent and they'll be like, oh, no, I hate you. No, they'll love you and serve you nice. But when you talk about marrying, they will ask. The first question is, what do you know about our culture? Are we just going to lose a whole generation of culture because you got married to our daughter or you married son? They're very, you know, if it was a son bringing back somebody else, they might not mind, but they'll ask, does this young lady know how to be a Kazakh wife? They know the expectations of the family, the expectation of the people. So no, they don't shun it necessarily, but there is a lot of homogeny when it comes to marriage. But I've been able to chalk it up to preservation. It's not a thing of racism, it's preservation. On the other hand, because when you get married in Kazakhstan, because of that homogeny, what they've had to do, they have a department in the government where you must go and register your marriage, and they do a lineage research, and you have to be 7 people removed from your wife or your husband, because a lot of times, sometimes people might be 4 people removed and not know it. So they force them to go through this process. So that's also caused some other issues in the birth area and stuff like that when you get too close with your gene pool. So some people who understand that, some people who are a lot more modern in their way of thinking, they're very open to opening up the marriage pool. But as a rule, Kazakhs are a little bit more focused on increasing their own numbers.
Okay.
Okay, so Sister Fitch, you're gonna make some comments about what we're gonna have also to brief next week on the package, and then we'll let my uncle, Farouk, if you don't have anything else, I'll let my uncle Abdul Rahman Sharif close us out with a prayer that's on as well.
So first of all, thank you. This talk on culture really gives such great insight as to why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to get to know each other, because this was such a rich presentation. I mean, this was, and I just want to say also that if you have a business partner or friend, invite them to these presentations because as you can see, these webinars, this Brother Farouk is just so well prepared. And the information that he is sharing with us is so relevant and inspiring. And I can tell you from experience, I feel, that this travel group is in such good hands, Brother Farouk. You have done in these last 2 webinars, you have truly inspired me. I'm about ready to pack up and move to Kazakhstan. Truly, I am. And then last but not least, you see I'm the most important person, but at Masjid Muhammad, our motto is teamwork makes the dream work. And, Imam Talib initiated this project. I am the liaison, but Kafi is on this line and she's the CFO. And we are looking to confirm the travel package so that we can get that included in the Masjid Muhammad newsletter. And we're looking to confirm that by 6/15, June 15th. And that will be what the costs will be on the ground, what the ground agenda will be, and all of the perks that's included. And then at that point, Kafi will be the one who will be receiving your monies if you want to travel with us. So please invite someone to this next webinar that is on June 8th, and it'll be on logistics at the same time using the same link. And again, thank you, Brother Imam, Farouk, and everyone for this opportunity to work with you. Brother Imam, any last words?
Just please note, now we've gotten into general stuff with the Silk Road and then the culture. Now we get ready to get into specific areas. But so please, if you invite others, make sure we allow our dear brother Farouk, as he's been doing, to get through the presentation. We will, depending on time, take questions out of the area, but we're trying to get into specific areas now of business. But the general questions and things will still be acceptable, depending on what time they come in.
And just to remind you that each one of these webinars will be in Masjid Muhammad's newsletter that comes out every Friday, and on the landing page that Brother Farouk has. So any webinars that you want someone to listen to that have already been presented, they'll have that opportunity.
Okay. Farouk, if you got anything else, if not, we'll let Imam Sharif close us out.
No, sir, I'm good.
Oh Allah, we pray for your divine providence upon this meeting and this continuing seminar series. We seek your refuge from anxiety and grief. We seek your refuge from lack of strength and laziness. And we seek your refuge from covetousness, and we seek your refuge from being on par with death and oppression of men. All our suffice of what is allowed to keep us away from what is wrong. With thy grace, make us free from walking of what is beside thee. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Malik Yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you again, Farouk. My regards to the family as well.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please give my salam as well. Brother Abdurrahman, Imam, good to meet you. I didn't
Thank you very much.
Very good to meet you.
I'm looking forward to coming.
Yeah. Oh, are you coming? We're gonna take care of you. That's a problem. Bring some shorts. Bring some shorts for the summer.
Yeah, Rashad Ibn.
Brother Tyler, how you doing? Alhamdulillah, how's everything?
Hey man, give your father my regards. But I just left your area, man. I was just there.
He's ready to retire. He's retiring this year.
Okay, yeah. Hopefully I can make that retirement, man.
Yeah, it'll be nice stuff. Okay, you
definitely.